So what was Jesus writing? What was he writing on the ground? This is the only time in the gospel that ever says Jesus wrote anything. This is the only instance of Jesus writing anything. What was he writing? Well, of course, Christians for 2,000 years have been wondering, what in the world was he writing? And for most of that time, most of the theologians have been men. Of course, nowadays we have many excellent women theologians, and some of them have suggested an answer. They have suggested that it's very likely what Jesus was writing is, where is the man? Question mark. Because it says that she was caught, this poor woman was caught in the very act of adultery. Where's the guy? So Jesus is in a situation in which obviously there is not much integrity in the people who have brought this woman. It's a difficult situation because they've got the law. She broke a rule and they've got it right there in the law of Moses. And so she deserves to be stoned to death. By the way, the punishment is for the man to be stoned to death as well, but he's not there. And so Jesus is in a difficult situation, and let's see how he handles it, because we all have difficult situations. And a situation is more than just one thing. A situation is always a complex mixture of things. And so how does Jesus handle this situation? So first of all, he handles it on the personal level with the woman. And so first of all, what he does is forgive her, which is pretty interesting. He says, I don't condemn you. I don't condemn you. He forgives her. Well, but that's interesting because she didn't ask for forgiveness. So Jesus has forgiven her and she hasn't even asked for it. Well, that's interesting. And then Jesus says to her, go and sin no more, which is the equivalent of saying, go and get yourself back. You lost yourself somewhere. Because when we sin, as St. Paul says, when we sin, we lose, ourself has to die in order for the sin to live. Because the sin isn't who we most truly and deeply are. So who we most truly are has to die so that the sin can live. What Jesus says to her, he calls her to her own personal responsibility at this level of responsibility. Go get yourself back. Don't lose yourself again. That's what Jesus seems to be most interested in. And what's interesting is he doesn't require faith of her. Sometimes when Jesus heals someone, he wants to know if the person has faith. He doesn't require faith before he shames all of the Pharisees and scribes who have brought her. He forgives her and he doesn't require faith of her, but he doesn't let her off. He's very merciful, but he doesn't ignore personal responsibility on the level of the person. He's still saying to her, who are you going to make yourself to be? You need to find yourself and make yourself to be the person you really, truly want to be. There are those, we all have, that's the personal responsibility we all have. We all have to turn on the switches inside of us that nobody can turn on for us, so that we will say to ourselves, I've got to do what nobody else can do for me. I've got to make myself the person I'm going to be in this world. How am I going to, who am I truly going to be? And how will I make myself to be that person? Jesus calls her to that personal responsibility, which we all have. And he's saying, somehow you lost yourself. Go find yourself again. That's what Jesus is most interested in, not her forgiveness and not even her faith at this point. What Jesus seems to be interested in is if she experiences the forgiveness of God, maybe the faith will come. Maybe the faith will come next. But of course, that's not the whole situation. It's not just her personal responsibility. That's what the Pharisees and the scribes want to make this about. They want to make it about, you broke a rule, period, end of story. So therefore, you're responsible. So therefore, we're going to pick up some rocks and kill you. But Jesus doesn't just stay at the level of personal responsibility. He acknowledges that, but he doesn't just stay there. Because there's also, in any situation that we are in, there's always the personal level, there's always the cultural level, and there's always the social level. So they're in a social situation. This woman's in a social situation in which it's an unjust society in which men are always in charge. There are no women in any position of power in this society. It's always men, 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 men. And women have the standing of a child. Their voice cannot be considered in court as a true adult. And so this is a society in which at the social level this woman lives in that she's not responsible for. She doesn't make the society she lives in. It's a mixture of nonsense and sense, of some good things and some bad things, of some things of justice and some things of injustice. And Jesus acknowledges that that's part of this whole situation. And part of the situation is that the social setup around here is being run by men who don't have any integrity, who are not people of integrity or of fairness or of justice. And then there's the cultural level, because there's not only, this is the social body. You can see the social body, the way a society is organized. But what about the soul of the society, which are the attitudes and the values and the decisions inside the minds and the hearts of everybody? That's the invisible soul of the situation. So there's a personal responsibility in this situation. There's a social setup, but there's also the soul of the society that's around this woman. And the soul of that society lives by a certain set of values, and it doesn't acknowledge everyone as having the same value. Men have more value than women, and this woman, and the somebodies of society who have status and power and money and titles, they are more important than this woman who is a nobody. We don't know her name. She's a nobody. And interestingly, we don't know the names of most of the people that Jesus ever dealt with. They're all nobodies. Jesus was an expert at dealing with people who were considered the nobodies. There's only a few people. Jairus, the Roman official, there's a few people we know their names. But Jesus seems to have lived a life in which he could, because, we all live this kind of life where it's just one thing after another and our life is going along. Jesus seems to have lived a life in which he could stop the forward momentum of his life moving from thing to thing. And he could stop for a nobody. And he could help a nobody. And this woman is one of those in the social and the cultural life and the soul of that society. And so Jesus lives by a higher cultural value. He invites everyone to live at the higher value of treating everyone with the same dignity and worth. And when it comes to the social setup of these men who are Jesus, there's a whole system of social boundaries, about who you can talk to, who you can't talk to, who you can touch, who you can heal, and Jesus reaches right across those boundaries. Jesus is a boundary crosser. If you haven't read the Gospels lately, read the Gospels and notice how much Jesus is a boundary crosser. He comes into social situations in which there are rules, but if he sees somebody who is in need, he crosses the boundary and he helps them. And so we're living in a life that's very much like we have the same situation that Jesus does. There are situations in our life. We're in situations all the time. And all of those situations, we have to ask ourselves, okay, what's the situation I'm in? Well, there's always three parts to it. There's my own personal responsibility. There is the social setup. How just and unjust is it? Do I need to reach across some boundary that has been set up by my society that is unjust and unfair and not and senseless? It doesn't make sense and it's not full of integrity. Is there something I need to reach across? And then there is the cultural soul of the situation. What are the values here? Are they higher? Do I need to reach up to higher values than the values in this society? The highest value being the value of a person. The highest value we know is being a person. It's why we call God a person, because it's the highest thing we can say about God. It's the highest value we can come to. God is person. It's our highest value, is to treat everyone that way. And so all of our situations they're mixtures, they're complicated. And so we need to remember that as we go on into our lives, is to look at those things. Where's the body of the situation? Where's the soul of the situation? And who am I going to make myself to be in this situation? But we need to remember this, that if we are people who have failed in our situations, if we have sinned, if we are feeling that we don't deserve to go on, then we need to remember what Jesus does with this woman. He forgives her. And she doesn't even ask for it, and she forgives him. He forgives her, because forgiveness is not the main thing he's interested in. The main thing that Jesus is interested in is, don't do this anymore. Get yourself back. Get the truest version of yourself back so that you can live a life at a higher level. So let's come to this. Let's come to this altar and to the sacred meal and receive sacred food so that we can live lives of integrity. And let's remember, no matter what it is we have done, what Jesus is saying to us, first of all, I forgive you. Go and sin no more. And get your real self back again.